About myself, Jake Gaddis. I've been with Gigamon for a little over a year now. And today we're going to run you through Gigamon Threat Insight. Gigamon Threat Insight is our network detection and response platform solution. So for those of you that are familiar with that, great. For those who are not familiar with that, acronym or that term there, what we do is we look at network traffic for indicators of compromise. Malicious and bad actors usually leave some sort of evidence in the network traffic to suggest that they're there, that they're up to no good. And GTI, which is the acronym for Gigamon Threat Insight, helps to surface that. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about Gigamon Threat Insight, looking at ransomware, or at least that being the use case. Most of us are familiar with ransomware. Peter Stayert has put together a presentation that should, for the next 30 minutes, entertain you and enlighten you on the specifics of GTI focused on the ransomware use case. So with that being said, and to make the most use of our time, I'm going to hand it over to Peter so he can kind of run you through the slides. And I appreciate you guys joining us today.
Thanks so much, Jake. So are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see it, Peter.
All right, thanks. So as we look at this, right, I mean, Jake did a great job of introducing himself. I'm Peter Stayert. I'm the Senior SC Manager for Threat Insight. So feel free to reach out and ask questions in the channel as needed, right, in the chat. And we can go through and answer those. And Jake's very good about responding to those as we go along here. So as we look at Threat Insight, right, I mean, it's good to understand from a Gigamon perspective what the current state of ransomware is, where Gigamon fits in the fight against ransomware. And this is going not just Threat Insight, but Gigamon as a whole, and then understand the challenges businesses face combating ransomware. And as we look at this, right, it's good to understand overall in 2021, 37% of all organizations globally were victims of ransomware. Now, this is only information that's been reported, right? So who knows what that actual number is? It's probably much higher than that. Going further, right, the average ransomware payout was $570,000. And that's up 82% since 2020. It's key to understand that these payments are getting larger because of the way and the change and the shift in the way ransomware is working today. And then finally, just since 2020, right, we've had 130 different strains of ransomware detected. So with that, I mean, it's good to understand where we come from a history perspective, right? The first well-known ransomware was like the AIDS Trojan. It was during the AIDS conferences, late 80s, early 90s, they actually sent out, the 1.44 meg floppy disks. It had a piece of ransomware on there, locked the systems in for a finite amount of money for those attending the conference. They would actually get their system back unlocked. So pre-2019, it was really just smash and grab, opportunistic, usually within 15 minutes of infection to encryption, right? So while we did see a lot of information here, the focus was on individual targets, individual consumers. There were some bleed over into the, corporate organizations and stuff like that. But as they went further, right, it's just mass distribution and not targeted. Post 2019, the effect has changed quite a bit. It's been slow burn, very targeted attacks, organizations that they know can't afford to not pay. Right. So we're looking at targeted solutions. We're looking at, they want to get into the infrastructure. They want to be able to see what's going on. They're going to do a lot of the things advanced persistent threat actors are going to do when they're targeting an organization. They're going to laterally move within the organization. They're going to steal important data to ensure the ransomware is actually, effective, and they ensure they get the payout, right? Even if you can just decrypt it from a backup or restore from a backup, right? That's great. But if they have the data and you don't pay the ransom and they're going to publish the data, that can be catastrophic for an organization. And what we're seeing based on this is, double, triple, and quadruple extortion from organizations, right? A few weeks ago, a major NAS vendor had a 0-day vulnerability, was targeted by a ransomware organization. And what they did is they went through and encrypted all these NAS systems that the customers had, and based upon this 0-day vulnerability. And so they went to the consumers and said, hey, for X number of dollars, we'll decrypt your NAS. Well, that's great. It's kind of like, okay, pretty low hanging fruit, smash and grab, 0-day exploit, go from there. But they actually went further to, went back to the NAS provider and said, oh, for X close to, 300, 400, $500,000, we're going to go, hey, if you want your 0-day exploit, guess what? We're going to actually charge you for that. And and if you want to be a good patron to your customers for $1.18 million, we'll give you all the keys to decrypt your customers' NASs. So not only are they exploiting the customers at this point, they're also exploiting the organization that had the 0-day. So it's kind of a reverse exploitation from what we normally see from a ransomware perspective, but it is something we're probably going to see more and more, right? The problem is ransomware is costing organizations a ton of money. You start looking at the cyber insurance organizations that exist out there. If there aren't proper controls in place, they're not going to pay anymore on ransomware, right? A lot of organizations are like, oh, I'm just going to take cyber insurance. If I get hit with ransomware, I'm going to just leave it at that. But it's not working anymore, right? Ransomware operators are now innovating faster than organizations can keep up. We know this, right? I mean, look at the number of new variants over the last year and a half, right? Traditional security tools are not effective against ransomware. They know how to get past them. And it's not just about encryption anymore, right? It's about, going through and disrupting the business. How do I ensure that I'm going to get paid and not just be able to restore from backup? And this is where threat insight really comes in, right? So when we start looking at that low and slow lateral movement in an organization, you need not just north-south movement, not, to what's going to and from the internet. I need to know what's going on east-west, right? They need to be able to get into the infrastructure, figure out where the keys to the kingdom lie, and you get to that data, extort that data or expose it and, exfil it, and then take it and then encrypt those systems, right? It's no longer, I'm going to, hit a couple of systems and go from there and get out within 15 minutes. They need to figure out where that information is. So you're going to see, privilege escalation. You're going to see the normal MITRE attack framework objects there where you have the initial, stuff all the way through data exfil and then the encryption phase. With that, because they're there for beyond just 15 minutes, you need 365 days of view because you don't know when they're going to hit or how long they've been there. So if something happens, well, I need to be able to look back, when did this initial infection take place? Going further than that, when you're looking down a network detection and response tool to help out with this, you need to look at it from a human analysis perspective, looking at, what information are we providing from a threat detection and response perspective? What detections are we firing off? How are we doing it from a human intel perspective? Going into machine learning, right? Because a lot of this stuff may be low and slow, meaning you may see one object and then you may not see another object or another indicator for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. And this is where machine learning and AI is really crucial in helping identify that low and slow movement. But in all reality, you need a hybrid analysis approach, a combination of human analysis and machine learning to look at this data. Going further, right, we look at the availability of guided playbooks. Not everyone is going to be an expert looking at the data moving forward, right? They need to be able to quickly pivot and look for unusual user agents in an environment, looking for maybe just something as simple as log4j, right? What queries do I need to run? I need to be able to pivot across that and have a starting point as a tier 1 analyst. I may not have the experience to look at that, but I'm going to be asked to do something there, as well as, the ability to parallel hunt, meaning I can pass this information on to another analyst to look at. When you look at a SOC, most SOCs have multiple people working on a single investigation. Hey, I just found this in here. Can you take a look at this? That's important to be able to go from there. Integrations are critical, right? There's different ways of looking at building a SOC. You can either use one vendor and put all your eggs in one basket, or you can go even further and go, hey, I want to build a SOC with the best of breed tools. And when you start looking at best of breeds, you need to make sure integrations are capable. And then extended reporting, going back beyond just 1 week, 2 weeks, and have the ability to, run reports over the last 90 days of data. With that, it's good to understand what proactive hunting actually is here. And really, it's forming a hypothesis, conducting a search, and if nothing is proven, go back and start a new hypothesis. But if something is proven, It's really, how do I pivot and expand that investigation? How do I ensure what I'm looking at is really bad, right? I have a big pile of hay. I'm down to, a pile of needles. Well, which needle do I need to pull out next, right? Do I need to get incident response involved? Do I need to develop a new detection, a new comment for what's happening here? And with that, Threat Insight allows you to actively pursue that information and move forward from there. When I start talking about guided playbooks, right? I mean, it's good to understand that there's so much information, and looking at being able to query vast amounts of metadata and not knowing where to start is critical, right? Your tier one analysts with this only need to focus on one or two things. Hey, do I need a source IP address? Do I need a desk IP address? How do I get that information? How do I have that availability? And the query may be one query in these that's extremely extensive, or you could end up with 8 queries as you see one of these objects in here, right? Those are 8 queries I don't have to worry about doing, right? Those are things I don't have to develop. They're already developed for me, so I don't have to do that. Going further to that parallel hunting capabilities, it's really that ability to conduct coordinated investigations across the entire security team, knowing who created the investigation, when was it created, how many queries are tied to that investigation. It's always good to put a description of what you're looking for in that investigation, right? And it allows you to streamline investigations by searching for multiple events and multiple things at a single point in time. Which gets us to what really Threat Insight is. It's a network detection and response tool that is focused on visibility, detection, and response, right? So it is a guided SaaS solution. And what I mean by a guided SaaS solution is we are the best of a SaaS offering, or software as a service, as well as the MSSP model. And by that, I'm saying we are not an MSSP. We're not 24/7 eyes on glass. What we do offer is actually the Gigamon Applied Threat Research Team, which is helping to develop those detections in the back end. So out of the box, there's content there. They're developing the playbook so that you don't have to be an expert in the Insight query language right out of the box. You have the availability to pivot through the data and look what's happening from that perspective. Going further, every Gigamon Threat Insight customer has access to a technical success manager. That technical success manager is there to ask questions if you have an investigation going on and you don't know where to pivot from there, right? They have weekly and bi-weekly calls with the SOC analyst to go through and go, hey, this is great. Let's look at what you're doing. Let's figure out how we can help you improve. Let's get you, move the ball forward here, make you a better analyst. Let's help tune the environment. Is there any other places that we're missing from a visibility perspective that we need another sensor in place, right? They're that available, right? So on the other side of it is if something does happen, right? You need to reach out and ask the question. They're there for that, right? They also help with, hey, I need to create my own detection. How do I do that? They can walk you through that process, help guide you in that process to move forward. But when we start thinking about ransomware and we start looking at network traffic today, so much of this data is coming from all over the place, whether it's coming from containers, service mesh networks, virtual machines. How do I get access to that data? Do I have it from a physical and virtual tap? Do I have a native tap applications? Do I have deployment services, provisioning infrastructure? Where is this data coming from? And then how do I feed those tools? Looking at it, feeding it beyond Gigamon Threat Insight and the guided SaaS NDR solution. I have other tools, network performance monitoring tools. They're going to look at very much similar data, application performance monitoring tools. How do I get access to that, right? And it's like, I don't need just north-south anymore. I need that east-west visibility. I need that movement in between the containers on a single host. I need to be able to discover unmanaged hosts, stuff where I can't put an agent on. I may not be able to, run my EDR solution on something, as well as I need to meet compliance, service level organization agreements, inspect encrypted traffic. That's really crucial here. And we're seeing, Google stated last year that over 90% of all internet bound traffic today is encrypted. So think about that. If you don't see what's going on there, how are you going to be able to tell from a SOC perspective how to handle that information? So going with that, right, you need a hybrid cloud visibility fabric. And Gigamon can help provide that, where we can analyze, transform, broker, and access that data, and then feed all the necessary tools from there, right? Providing threat insight, that feed of information, looking at sending the information to the firewalls, the IDSs, the IPSs, providing observability, whether that's coming from on-prem, a public cloud offering, a hybrid cloud offering, or anything in between. Having that one button to push and manage it from a single point is crucial. And then finally, we get into the decryption, right? It's important to understand that while Gigamon does have decryption features here, what makes us different is we can both do inline and out of band decryption. So inline, meaning we're going to look at everything north, southbound, or even east, west that is using things like TLS 1.3, where you have to be a man in the middle to decrypt that data. So we're going to be able to take that, decrypt it once, pass it not only to out of band tools, but also inline tools. So we're going to make those tools much more efficient and effective, meaning, guess what? I can send encrypted traffic to my IDS, IPS. It doesn't have to worry about decrypting it. So maybe I don't need this huge mega box anymore, right? Maybe I can do it with just, the size that I need for the throughput that I have on my network. And then it goes to the next tool and the next tool. So I'm decrypting it once and then utilizing it, multiple times. Going further, when we go to TLS 1.3, like I stated earlier, it has to be man in the middle. But anything north southbound, if you don't own the public private key pair, even in TLS 1.2, it's important to understand how I'm going to access and visibility in that traffic. The other sides of it is understanding what do I decrypt and what do I keep encrypted, right? Having the availability to have a decrypt, no decrypt list so that I can ensure that the data that's being decrypted isn't in a policy violation. So if something is on a decrypt list, I'm going to decrypt it no matter what. But if it's going to, let's say, a financial institution like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whomever it may be, I want all that data to be on the no decrypt list to ensure that everything's good, to ensure that strongest privacy support, right? Healthcare information, all the stuff that I don't want to have to deal with as an analyst that I may accidentally run across. So when we look at ransomware defense, the threat insight or the Gigamon perspective to ransomware defense is really network visibility plus threat detection and response are crucial for this information, right? You can't do it without one without the other. EDR or endpoint detection and response is a great place to start, right? But you're always going to have IoT, OT objects in an environment where you can't put a sensor. You may have legacy operating systems that you're in your environment that just don't support agents from an EDR perspective. Or, depending upon you're in and what vertical you're in, you may not be able to put a sensor on an object. If it's BYOD, maybe it's a cell phone, right? Maybe it's, seen it before, IV pumps in a hospital, the heart rate monitors in a hospital, all those systems that you can't touch once they're implemented, right? You need the visibility there, but I can't put an agent on there. How do I get that visibility? And it's, again, using that NDR, that threat detection and response capabilities to look at that information. So the Gigamon approach really is, the first step is to ensure you have a visibility fabric in place, not just for on-prem anymore. It has to be in the cloud as well, right? We're going beyond just north-south anymore. It's definitely that east-west traffic, right? Not teams can achieve foundational visibility. We know this, right? TAP and AG is foundational to any network design today. But going further, they need to gain visibility into those virtual environments, whether that's, KVM OpenStack, ESXi, NSXT, Nutanix, whatever it may be, all the way to, a multi-cloud environment. Maybe you have instances in AWS or Azure or GCP. But you know what? I'm probably not going to put all my eggs in one basket because those public cloud vendors are one of them is going to go down at some point or another. It all happens. But what do I do? I don't want to have to deploy different, objects in all these locations. I want to be able to manage it from a central location. And we can do that with Gigamon, right? And then going further, right, we can do that SSL decryption on-prem, providing, that availability to get that X-ray vision against ransomware activities, ensure tools are, getting the best value out of those tools. The other side is avoid privacy and tool capacity concerns. I mean, it's significant. We've seen tools that are, get a performance hit of up to 96% by turning decryption on. At that point, what is it really? It's more of a decryption box than it is actually the tool that you bought it for. And then going further is right, making sure centralized decryption is done with guidance. I mean, the NSA is flat out saying the best way to do it is do centralized decryption, decrypt once and feed it to multiple tools. And then the final piece here is, the use of a guided SaaS NDR. So you can have those advanced detections. You don't have to worry about creating them, right? They're being created on the back end as new emerging threats occur. And, making sure that everyone's aware of what's happening, right? I don't have to figure out the new tactics, techniques, and procedures that are existing for a new threat actor, right? It's great they're there. But you know what? I also need to be able to go back for a full year. I am not stuck with just, hey, I have 1 week of metadata. I have 30 days of metadata or 90 days of metadata. What happens if it occurred, 6 months ago, 8 months ago? Think SolarWinds. How do I verify how long ago I got that information? How long have they been on my network? Well, now you can go back a full year and ask that same question and figure it out. All of this is really to drive and improve SOC effectiveness and reduce burnout. I mean, SOC analysts are just constantly being hammered, right? Attacker dwell times are 280 days before detection and remediation in an environment. And on top of that, how many false positives are they fighting every day, right? A high fidelity, low false positive NDR solution is crucial, right? It's going beyond just using AI and ML. And then how long does it take to tune that AI and ML engine and go beyond that? And then how do I go even further than that, right? How do I maintain? How do I, administer this tool? All of that's taken care of on the back end using the guided SaaS NDR solution. With that, I would like to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, again, feel free to put them in chat or ask them as available.
Thank you, Peter. That was a great presentation. And just to kind of summarize here, the takeaway and the essence of that presentation was, and I hope you guys got this as well, that ransomware is a very serious threat to organizations of all sizes, right? All verticals, all sizes, different types of companies can be impacted by ransomware. How do you defend against it? Well, the different techniques and tactics that come into play with ransomware and spread of ransomware and the actual entry into a network are visible from the network layer. And that's what we aim to do, is provide visibility into network traffic to allow the people who are the practitioners within an organization, the security practitioners, to identify it and act on it and mitigate it. So we get that visibility with, the Gigamon visibility fabric, which allows us to see into all the packets. And as Peter mentioned, decrypt the encrypted packets so we can kind of see what's happening in there as well. And then we focus on the network traffic from a security perspective with Gigamon Threat Insight, which is our network detection and response security solution, which is a service. So you can deploy these sensors throughout your network. They give you that, they tap into that visibility and they give you the security perspective you need to identify malicious or threat actor tactics and techniques that are relevant to ransomware in this case. So that again was, hopefully the takeaway from it, the essence. I know Peter covered a lot of ground there, but I want to say thank you to everyone who attended this session for your time today. I want to say thank you to Atlantic Data Security for putting this together. And with that, Mark, I will hand it back to you.